after some time, we're back to Snap Hell Wanted, this game, which, even though it came out 4 years ago, turned out to be a sort of remake of the original games, with the help of virtual reality, adding several more minigames, and of course also the continuation of the story after Ultimate Custom Night. But let's focus on the remakes, to see all their differences and discrepancies with the original games, and let me tell you, there are a lot of things that have changed. And of course, we'll start with Snap, the first game of the franchise. To begin with, here and now we are closer to the buttons, since they are now between the door and the window, the opposite of the original Snap. Remember how things would get out of control if we didn't check the cameras? Well, in Hell Wanted we can't let you see them, so some mechanics have changed. For example, Freddy will definitely come to your office. Even when he's already at the door, he won't leave. So the only thing left for us to do is save power and keep the door closed for the rest of the night. And another thing, don't you dare look past the door, because if you do... Other than that, in Hell Wanted you can see fewer monitors than in Snap. Although this might be because we no longer have a tablet to access the cameras, but now one of the monitors and a tablet to switch cameras will take its place, which takes up more space. In addition, the windows also changed, as they now have a checkered pattern. However, in Snap 1, meaning the original game, these patterns weren't there. On the other hand, it's a bit strange that Golden Freddy is the only animatronic who doesn't appear here in Hell Wanted, since even though he's an Easter egg, it would have been interesting to see him again. But come on, there's not even a reference to him here. Also, another difference is that for Night 5, you have to enter Blacklight mode, where the environment takes on a black and white tone. This is a reference to when you ran out of power in the original game. And now the animatronics, when they do the jungskares, will have a different appearance, which is kind of interesting. And well, these would be the most relevant differences that we would find here. Now let's move on to Half Snap 2, where there is now a new monitor and a tablet for the cameras, just like in Half Snap 1. And of course Golden Freddy still doesn't appear, or rather here, withered Golden Freddy. In fact, the withered animatronics, except for withered Foxy, won't be active until we enter their night in Blacklight mode. And come on, this could easily be considered Night 6. In Blacklight mode there are only 2 nights, but when we enter each one we can notice that the color of the environment changes. And obviously this isn't in the original Snap. But besides that, there are more details added to Hell Wanted, like now we can actually see Twitchika watching us, or that Mangled can come through both the vent and the hallway. Which makes a lot of sense since it has the ability to stick to the ceiling, and this is much more noticeable when we could see the animatronics moving like Puppet coming out of its box to attack us. But that's something we'll talk about later. However, as expected, not everything stays true to the original game. For example, things like Toy Bonnie's animation are changed to fit the game, because to be honest, it would be a bit difficult to make it move just like in the original game. Likewise, the office is modified a bit, since now you can see there's more space between us and the hallway in front. Surely this is so there won't be any space issues when the animatronic shows up in front of us. On the other hand, something very important to mention is that the difficulty might be reduced, since you can wind up the puppet's box and use the flashlight at the same time. Even so, you'll still have to stay alert in case any animatronic moves to attack us, especially Toy Freddy or Withered Freddy, since the only sign that they're coming is seeing them almost entering the office. Although this is especially true on the Withered Night, since if we set it to the maximum difficulty, believe me, it will be tough. On top of that, with the little lighting the game gives you. But anyway, let's continue with Snaf 3. To begin with, now we're located in a corner of the office. So the place to interact is much narrower, which is good because it makes the gameplay easier. And actually now we have 2 monitors and a maintenance panel very close to us, where we only have to turn a little. Also now to our right we can see a vent that in the original game wasn't visible from the office. However, in Angel Wanted, this is only used to see when Springtrap comes through there. Although that actually helps to see the other route that Springtrap can take to attack us. Which is very much appreciated, because in Snaf 3 this could easily go unnoticed, if we don't notice it on the vent camera. Even so, this would only work to see how close it is to reaching the other side. On the other hand, there are animatronics that don't show up, like Phantom Chica and Phantom Puppet. And there are others whose mechanics have changed. For example, Phantom Mangle can now appear in the vent cameras, making it more like Phantom Balloon Boy. Likewise, we have Phantom Freddy who won't attack us, which makes him pretty useless and just makes him look like an Easter egg. And finally, there's his Blacklight level, which is the last and hardest one. It references the ending of the original Left 4 FNaF 3, where everything catches fire because of bad wiring. So on this night, the screen will be red the whole time. And as you might expect, yes, this doesn't happen in Left 4 FNaF 3. We're only told that there was a fire through a newspaper. But wouldn't it have been great to see how the fire happened while we were inside during the night? That would have been epic. And well, now we start with the games. Even though they don't appear exactly as they do in Hell Wanted, several of their mechanics are implemented. So yes, we'll start with Half FNaF 4. In Night Terrors, there are 3 minigames similar to Night 5 from the original game. Only here, it goes through many changes depending on which animatronic we're facing. For example, with Phantom Freddy, we'll have to deal with his puppets. With Nightmare Night Marionette, we'll have to worry about his tentacles. And with Nightmare Fredbear, we'll have to worry about his big personality and his head, which can sometimes appear on the bed. As you can see, it varies a lot. But the good thing is that now there's more room for error. That is, we'll be allowed to turn on the flashlight and close the door more easily, and we won't lose the night. This removes much of the difficulty, making it easier, obviously. However, something that is worth regretting is that the other Nightmare animatronics are not present. The only ones are Nightmare Fredbear and Night Marionette, since the others will only appear in the Hell Wanted DLC, and with mechanics that are almost nothing like the original game. So let's just continue with the minigames of Plush Trap and Nightmare Balloon Boy, since these do have their own levels in Hell Wanted. However, there isn't much difference. Just that the speed they have to reach us can be different. But they're still predictable, thanks to the sounds they make, just like in the original game. On the other hand, in Blacklight mode, there are some differences. In Plush Trap, the hallway now has objects scattered on the floor, and with Nightmare Balloon Boy, now there are balloons everywhere. And now let's continue with the last game. That's right, Sister Location. And even though its nights aren't in Hell Wanted, some of its minigames are included. For example, walking in the dark to get past and avoid Funtime Foxy. However, here there is almost no difference, except that in Sister Location this part is much easier, since Funtime Foxy isn't as active. But in the Blacklight mode of Hell Wanted, we do see a significant change, since we'll see a bunch of animatronics scattered throughout the room, which will make it harder to reach our goal. Curiously, it's now Lolbit stalking us instead of Funtime Foxy. Moving away from that minigame, another one that resembles a night from Sister Location is repairing the animatronics. Just like when we have to handle Funtime Freddy and Circus Baby following orders in Sister Location here in Hell Wanted. Following instructions, we have to repair the original animatronics, where each one has different instructions. And well, we also have Ennard's level. However, as much as it has the atmosphere of Sister Location, it doesn't resemble any night we've seen in the original game. Although it would have been great. That being said, even though I've mentioned a lot of changes, there are some that apply to most cases, and I've saved them for this moment. For example, now you can pick up objects, and in most of the original games, there isn't much to interact with unless it's for survival. Here, you're given the freedom to throw your soda at the animatronics. But more importantly, now we can see the animatronics move. We must admit it, in the original snaps, we mostly see them standing still, but we can understand that they move because they change positions, and in the end, they give you a huge jump scare. And while this is meant to create the sense that they're coming after you, it would have been nice to see how these things move. That's something that does happen in Snaf Sniper Wanted. In fact, they really make the most of it and give it a much more realistic touch. Without a doubt, Sniper Elite Wanted. It's not an exact replica of the original games. It's not completely faithful to their mechanics, and not in other aspects either. It even removes some animatronics, but it improves and adds other things that help make the experience better, especially on the technical side above all, in terms of immersion. Even though I've only played it in its non-VR version, this game really shows its full potential when you play it in virtual reality. The gameplay is very different from when you play it on a computer. Sniper Elite Wanted, it may not be completely faithful to the original games, but it does give a different and refreshing approach when you play it. And for that and more, this will be, for me, one of the best official sniper games they've created so far.